Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel, the leadership panel on achieving openness in higher education. I'm Heather Joseph, the executive director of SPARC, based in Washington, D.C., and I'm honored to be joining you all today, if only virtually, for this important conversation and a continuation of the wonderful programming and the very rich conversations that we've already had over the start of the morning. We are very fortunate to have a distinguished panel of leaders in higher education and research institutions from here in the UAE with us today to explore challenges and solutions in relation to developing and implementing open science policies and practices within our institutions. We'll take a look at the current state of play, if you will, where we are in terms of the development of such policies and practices, and try to explore a little bit what the current challenges are, what the priorities look like to get to the end goals, and hopefully to look at some concrete solutions for achieving progress. I'd like to make sure to introduce our distinguished panelists. We have Dr. Batayeb, the Vice Chancellor for Research from Sharjah University, Dr. Bayan, the Provost from Khalifa University, Dr. Ghassan, the President of Abu Dhabi University, Dr. Albreki, the Vice Chancellor of the UAE University, and Cameron Carden, the CEO and founder of the Knowledge E Foundation. And gentlemen, if with your permission, shall we dive into the first set of questions? I'll go ahead and ask the questions, and I will just give you a cue for who might start, but please feel free to answer any of the questions, even if you are not the person that's designated to start the conversation. As I noted, we'd like to sort of start out by looking at the key motivations that are driving the desire to implement open research, open science policies and practices locally in the UAE. And I'm interested in hearing from you what you think the key priorities are that are really putting open research and open science at the front of your agenda as a higher education leader. And Dr. Batayeb, maybe we'll start with you.
Yes, thank you. Well, for open science, yeah, there are so many advantages. One, data is available for all. One, softwares are available for all, materials, methodologies, databases. Then it's possible for people to get together and work on a challenging problem and come up with a much higher quality of research. In fact, it's well known that when people get together and collaborate, what you produce is 2 times, 3 times better in quality than a single publication by a simple person. So there are so many advantages. Plus, if you are doing it in, for example, UAE, you are doing a service to your country. I mean, now we are talking about knowledge economy. Economy is in the knowledge. So when we do things together, when we open things to all, then we are contributing to the socio-economic development of the country. And with quality work, with quality knowledge, isn't it? And with enhanced technologies, etc. So it is very important to have this open science, and together in the universities in UAE, hopefully we can advance our research, technology, innovation further. Thank you.
Thank you. We very often hear the motivation of openness helping to increase collaboration to solve complex interdisciplinary problems as a motivator. And as leaders in the higher education sphere, that collaboration is something that, of course, to solve problems, collective societal problems, is very appealing. But we also often hear from higher education leaders that there's a great deal of pressure on institutions to sort of excel individually. So you have on the one hand, the drive to collaborate to solve complex problems. On the other hand, the need for research institutions to produce outstanding research, on your own, to be considered more in an elite status. And I'm interested in hearing if you are feeling that kind of a pressure when you're looking at potentially moving into a more open and collaborative way of sharing science. And perhaps, Dr. Ghassan, we can hear from you on that.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Heather, for the questions, and thank you, Khalifa University and Knowledge E and UNESCO. Yes, of course, the pressure is in a positive way. There are two types of pressure now. We have the internal pressure within single institutions to encourage a culture of interdisciplinary research, because monodisciplinary research is almost dead. So collaboration within the same institution is very, very useful for sure. And collaboration beyond the institution would be even better in order to increase the awareness and the openness of our research. Of course, there are external drivers, and we have to confess that some of them almost dictate to you that, the rankings. You have to be part of international research networks. You have to publish widely. You have to get the citations. By being open and collaborative, you will get more citation. Your research will become more visible. There's no question about it. I want, please, Heather, to refer to the first question as well, which is very, very interesting. It's the drivers for change. Why the change is happening? And when we look at COVID-19, during the COVID-19 period, people went online, and we had no choice but to go online. And I feel that there is now a sense of urgency in terms of becoming more open about our research, whether it's to open access or open science. We spoke about even open impact, what sort of impact you are creating. And research has shown that by working together, you produce better results. As my colleague mentioned from University of Sharjah, it would be of more value. So the driver could be economic. You save money by working together. There's no question about it. The technology is there. Digital technologies are there, and they would enable this collaboration, AI and data science and Internet of Things. And of course, the cultural change, which is happening in institutions in the UAE and beyond. So this culture of collaboration is becoming a driver as well for excelling, because once you are working for a university, you're working for the nation as a whole, and this is reality.
I appreciate, Dr. Ghassan, you raising the fact that during COVID, the sense of urgency to share openly was really put front and center, I think, with the research community as a whole. Has that sense of urgency, or how has that sense of urgency translated into progress on campus towards actually shifting the policies and practices more towards the adoption of open? If you had to describe where you are on campus in terms of, we're right at the beginning of the process of beginning to inculcate open policies and practices throughout our university, we're getting close to making that a reality. Where on the spectrum would you say your institution is? And I'm really interested actually in hearing from each of you on this, but perhaps we can start, Dr. Albrecht, with you first, and then maybe just a short answer on that from each of the panelists.
Okay. Let me try to answer the three questions at the same time, because I think they're connected.
Yes.
The urgency and, where are we? I think we are at the beginning of the road, to be honest with you, even though many scientists, they really feel compassionate about the collaboration. Only if it will come if you have the motivation. So in terms of motivation, I think many of the scientists in UAE, or even neighboring country, we are blessed with wealth, and so I think they want to do open access. The benefit of on a personal level, I believe, if we encourage it and advance in open access, given a chance to scientists and at disadvantage, I think this will help the scientists in other country at disadvantage. Now, I think to see the challenges, I think at later discussion will be, but I think many scientists but I think they have some concern to make it happen. I think my personal opinion is at the administration level in higher education should push it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bayan.
Right. I think maybe I'll answer 5 questions now.
We'll just keep adding.
No, I think I'll be additive if I can. So my thought on this is, I think we're sitting here in this panel, I guess, we're very privileged to have good institutions that are well-funded, where we can afford to pay for open access. This is a multi-million dirham project for each university to allow for this to happen. We have also witnessed, as you've seen from the presentation, I think by earlier presentation by Walter, is that open access does in fact, is more widely sort of seen, and once that happens, then people start to see the impact of your work and try to cite your work. Again, it's not about the citation game, it's about what your work is doing in terms of whatever impact it makes to move science forward. The one thing that, as I said, there are, of course, great minds are not confined to privileged countries or whatever, the first world, whatever. There is brilliance all over the world, and countries that don't even have that ability to pay for open access. So by doing this, we're actually, we're presenting our research, we're creating partnerships. I think from discussing this with my colleagues around the floor here, I'm sure that between 70 to 80% of our research is internationally collaborative. And that can only happen because we can communicate a lot faster these days. It's not all the old days where you publish a paper, goes into volume, somebody has to go there. What we produce is immediately sort of published. But there is there is an issue here, is that those great minds in some other countries that cannot afford this, what will they do then? They don't have the ability to pay for these large sums with open access. But I think one way forward with this is you start to establish new collaborations, and these become your partners in open access. Maybe it's because you are really doing truly collaborative work with them. And the thing about this is that it's diversity in thinking is so important. Different perspectives come from different regions, different countries, can only add value to the way you think about the science or whatever research you're doing. So this is my take on this.
I want to pick up a little bit more later on this theme of collaboration with international partners, with the need for creating partnerships, and in particular ensuring that all voices are included or lifted and included in the global intellectual conversation and sort of pursuit of knowledge. But I am interested, Dr. Bayan, I know that Dr. Albrecht sort of noted that his institution, he would say, we're sort of at the beginning of this process. Is that the same sense that you have, that this is early days, or do you feel that your institution may be farther along in the spectrum? And I really only ask mainly out of curiosity. I feel like here in the United States and with my colleagues in North America, we really have a sense that we're just at the starting stages, and I'm very interested to hear how that plays out in the UAE, whether that's similar or different.
Dr. Ghalib mentioned that we are at the starting stage, and I really agree. Even though open access and open science has been around for more than 40 years, we all know that. Some nations are much more advanced than others. With the case study we have seen today from Khalifa University was very, very impressive in terms of the use of open access. But I think we're developing, but we're at the very, very early stages, maybe.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Each of you noted in your comments that there's an appetite and an interest and real motivations, whether it's the collaborative angle, whether it's the angle of as funders invest in scientific research, that investment only gains in value if the results can be shared and built upon. Those motivations are powerful. The motivations to do something for not only advancing our institution, but societal interests, national interests. What are you seeing as key challenges, right? The motivators are powerful, and they are aspirational and inspirational. And yet we are still in early days, and that is in large part because it's not as easy to make these changes in culture, in practice, and in policy as it's not a simple thing. And Cameron, we haven't yet heard from you, so I'm wondering if you might get us started on what are some of the key challenges that you see that we need to work on to move off the starting block, if you will.
Thank you very much, Heather. I think I'll pick on the motivational factor that Professor Ghalib mentioned, and because to me, it's a key. And this motivation comes from two sides. From one side is the strategy that comes from the leadership level at universities. The second motivational part is a motivation that needs to be passed on to the generation or to the various groups, researchers, academics, and various groups within the university to follow that leadership direction. And when we talk about the direction, of course, you pointed out that this direction can be in societal impact. It could be towards the position of the university in the international ranking bodies. But rankings, in my view, are just a way of starting to measure or putting some context into the numbers or into some of the outputs of the university as not an end goal. It's basically a means to be able to check, start gathering data, but from my side, the societal impact and that motivation plays a bigger part. So when it comes to the implementation of open science policies, motivation is one side, the support of it from the leadership is paramount, but then it's creating that awareness and having that collective approach towards the encouragement towards, for example, sharing results of publication, sharing all the data when it comes to research publication, publishing in various journals, being open access, or so the motivation needs to come on the impact rather than on the measurement. If this journal has a high citation or not, it's to see how this publication can actually support the societal impact that the universities sometimes have towards the country, the region, and then at times on a global scale as well.
Can I add something?
Please.
Yeah, so let me make the discussion a bit more provocative. Worldwide, frankly, we are in a paradoxical situation. On one hand, for over 50 years now, we have been talking about open source, and everybody, developers, they are putting software, very useful software together and put it available to everybody, isn't it? This is happening the last 50, 70 years. And it's working. There are so many software, a lot of data. But now, whenever I meet with any publisher, these major famous publishers, they all scare me and tell me that in a few years' time, every journal will be open access, meaning an African publishing will have to pay 2,300 euros to publish his paper. You know for sure he cannot do that. And therefore, we are in a big dilemma. We are excluding possibly all Africa and many other places in the world. And many journals of open access, as you know, are losing credibility because of this and other things. So there is this dilemma that we want open science available to all, but the pressure of publishers asking us to pay thousands of dollars for any paper in a journal. So this has to be solved first before we can collaborate.
Thank you for raising that. I think that is at the heart of the most of the challenges, or many of the challenges I think that we're facing, is this notion that open access has become conflated with a single way of achieving the goal, and that is paying a publisher an article or an author side processing fee, an APC, in order to ensure that their paper is published openly. Yet that is only one potential business model, and business isn't, we can talk about commercialization in a little bit later in the panel, but that is only one model or one potential mechanism for achieving open access. It is the most visible, and I appreciate the framing of the comment that we often hear that our campuses, our campus leadership, funders, individual researchers feel pressure from some in the publishing community to move in that direction. What we also hear is that there's a whole community of publishers that operate in the not-for-profit environment, scientific and scholarly society publishers, university-based publishers, library-based publishing operations. So the more academic community oriented, owned, and aligned publishers. How visible is that layer of the publishing community in your institutions, and how viable an option do you see it is to really move away from saying yes to publishing in expensive APC journals and moving towards publishing solutions that can be open access, but that are perhaps driven by, supported by models that are not the high cost APC models? And I will throw it open to anyone who would like to start.
I'll take a stab at this, by the way. So I think just follow up on what Dr. Muhammad said, that by addressing one challenge, we are going to create another challenge in the future, by the way, those who have and those who don't. In terms of what you're talking about publishers, again, I'll say something, I'll move on to your point that you raised. The practice that's in some cases, and that because of the kind of the whatever profit or the publishers want to make, it kind of leads to some practices that I would call unhealthy. To promote your journal because you need to improve the impact factor of a journal, and then increase citations, and then inviting authors to try and cite, and these are practices that I've seen recently. And so you have a wide range of publishers, those from whatever we know, they're very kind of high value, prestigious, but we do have others, and I've seen it myself, and there's some faculty, some junior faculty kind of encouraged to submit or publish in these areas, and when we've had to take real strong measures to discourage our faculty from going with certain publishers,
Yeah.
because it seems to be more commercial than that of substance. Now, to your point about using other sort of other methodologies, and that we do have this situation with index listing and rankings, and so it's great if we have other kind of for to try and disseminate our work, but if they're not counted, it seems that some of our colleagues who looking at career progression would not target these, because they want to make sure that whatever they do kind of gives them the numbers that they need for work. So there are challenges, although I believe that you can put your work out, and universities are good platforms to try and disseminate results. But there's a lot of work to be done on this, by the way.
Can I add something?
Please do.
Look, higher education, the community in higher education is a very complex system. Faculty that are very intellectual people, so they are very conservative. I mean, they really don't adopt things faster. And the proof for that, COVID came, technology came, many sectors other than higher education, immediately they were agile to change. University is very slow to change for so many reasons. So open science, I believe it should start by open data. That means we have to change the mindset and the institution itself. Now, if I come to the scientists and say, well, let's go ahead and promote open science. They say, well, you don't do that with your data. You don't give me the data. You're not open to data. Open, the opposite of open is closed. So I think open, it means transparency. I believe if we're going to be successful into this forum and come out with something, I think we have transparency. It should be in the top priority in any higher education institution in the region. Thank you.
Heather, when you mentioned the sense of urgency, which was very, very interesting, without the sense of urgency, you cannot make any change. And this is reality. And we feel there is a sense of urgency. If you look at some of the change management model, John Cotter change management model, step 1, establish the sense of urgency. Step 2, establish the coalition. And the coalition is made of government, public-private universities, regulatory bodies, publishers maybe. They should be part of this coalition. So you can develop the right business model. Professor Mama, I know that you want a business model which could be affordable, but there is no free lunch. I mean, this is reality, open access, but still you have to pay for it somehow. So this may encourage even more collaboration between nations, I think. If you look at the change management model, after the established the coalition, you put the strategy at national level, and Dr. Ghalib, you mentioned even at the institutional level, it has to be driven by strategy, but then you do quick wins to prove to the community that for this faculty, it's really better for you to publish in an open access type of environment. So you can make the change of culture. Otherwise, we can talk about it as much as we want, and we will not be able to make the change. This is reality.
I think these are excellent points. What I'm interested in following up on this notion of what researchers and what institutions are rewarded for. So all of you have mentioned in some way, shape, or form things like locally on campus, individuals are rewarded for publishing in high impact journals, right? Impact factors, journal imprimaturs matter currently in tenure, promotion, research assessment processes for funding. Universities, similarly, the university rankings, I mean, they are a major motivating factor for many institutions globally. I mean, that's across the board. I'm really interested in this notion of a global collaboration and a sense of coming to agreement that these things have to change. Do you see a way forward for example, institutions to move away from utilizing impact factor in individual decisions on the one hand, and I think they're two separate questions. So do you see a way for your institution to potentially move away from using or relying as heavily on impact factors and journals as the main currency for promotion and funding. And maybe as a corollary question, how realistic is it to think about potentially a global coalition to change what goes into university rankings to better support open research practices? So 2 questions, and I would be happy to have anyone start on either of those 2.
I'll be very brief. In terms of course, there are internal drivers and external. Internal drivers, promotion to associate, full professors. Every university has their own procedures and policies, and you have to dictate sometimes that they have to be in Q1 and high impact factor journals and the rest. Of course, the external factors, the ranking, will play a major role in terms of driving the type of journal you can select and the impact factor. Of course, at national level as well, some nations may decide on the type of collaboration which would take place. They may decide it should be with the top 500 universities in the Ghassan Times R or 200. So there are so many factors which can affect the decision to select a particular journal, maybe, or a particular impact factor.
I could add to that. Impact factor is very important and critical. My concern, if we move away from impact factor, we might move away from quality. And this is probably will be a concern of a faculty member. Yeah, so.
I think the only thing I want to add when we talk about impact factor is just, where does it stop, by the way? Because, I mean, if you take one subject area, you would have, what about triple digits of kind of publications in this area, you know. So I think the solution to this, it's very difficult to take a local solution to this problem, to be honest with you, because you take a local solution, you're going to lose the game against others. It really needs a global sort of effort to try and address this issue.
I think some of the points were mentioned in the keynote earlier, but when it comes to measuring citations, what is that number? Is that a positive citation? Maybe an article has received like hundreds of citations. They could be a negative citation, actually criticizing that article, but just basically simply on the number, it wouldn't give it that merit. So in general, I know that for anything for us as human beings to be able to improve the change, we need to put it into numbers to start. But definitely as we learn and as we progress, those numbers need to evaluate, our ways of measure need to change. And we see this in policies of different countries on how they're motivating research. We used the REF example earlier today in terms of awarding research grants, so on and so forth, not to be simply based on citations, rankings. Also, we see a lot of changes in the ranking bodies as well. 2 years ago, there was no impact rankings, for example. Just the fact that it's started to be measured, even if it's not measured wholeheartedly, it's a start, in my opinion, and then it could be corrected. Recently, we saw there was a discussion about transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary research, which is really, I think the one thing that COVID taught us was that you need more than one discipline to solve socioeconomic, health, global problems. It's not just engineering, medicine, it's humanities, engineering, medicine, all different faculties working together. And really that collaboration between various sciences, building that interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approach to research has become very important. And then 3 weeks ago in the World Academic Summit, there's news that in 2024, there will be a interdisciplinary ranking of universities. Of course, all of these rankings puts extra pressure on universities to put the numbers together. And I think we need to take all of these metrics with a pinch of salt and our own insights. And I mentioned again, our own motivation at the beginning plays an important role as an institution, as a leader. Do we have a societal role within the country? What are the, so it's, I was doing my thesis on research, coming up with research strategy within higher education institutions. I was using the business canvas model. And really, when it comes to measuring and coming up with a strategy, a lot of it comes to the aim and the objectives of the university, the vision of the university. These things have not changed. I think at the core of the university, these visions have been set, but sometimes numbers will take us away from those core values. So finding that magic formula that would marry both these objectives of satisfying the rankings and the numbers, and also following the vision is quite hard. And it's a challenge for definitely, from my side, looking out from an observer, I can see that it's not easy.
That notion of numbers mattering, proxies, we use proxies for a reason, because they make our lives easier, and we're human, and we will naturally default to things that help us understand and take care of things in the quickest, not the quickest, but in an easier manner. But contextualizing those numbers in the rankings, in impact factor, looking at impact factors, putting them in context, as you said, I think is critically important. And this notion of collaboration and interdisciplinarity comes up time and time again as we talk to campus leaders around the world, that there really is this sense that the way science is being done is moving away from, I believe someone used the word monodisciplinary research earlier in this panel, and into this interdisciplinary world. That takes collaborations and sort of community building of a different kind on our campuses. I'm interested in hearing from you all how important is the efforts to build sort of open research collaborations across your campuses, across disciplines, and even among operating units. Are there collaborations that you are seeing emerging that are things you would like to highlight that you think others could learn from?
Yes, I can. Let me give you an example. At University of Sharjah, several years ago, are very important colleges related to humanities and social sciences, and that 6 of them, 6 out of 13 in the whole university: College of Sharia and Islamic Studies, College of Law, College of Communication, College of Fine Arts and Design, College of Art, Humanities and Social Sciences, and College of Business. All of this, in terms of research, they were not counting at all. They were not contributing much, because you need Scopus publications or ISI publications. And they were working alone. We were forming research groups. They were not interested. They said, all we need is a pen and a pencil to do our research. Now, when AI came, and we saw that there is a legal issue in AI, there is a financial issue, there is a psychological issue, there is an education issue, there is an applied sociology issue. Now, those 6 colleges now are contributing very heavily with a very modern college that we established only 2.5 years ago, College of Computing and Informatics. That all it does is big data, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, machine learning, IoT, blockchain, just name it. So now that you have people from applied sociology working with a dentist, working with a lawyer. And so there are situations where you are motivated by these multidisciplinary problems or new technologies emerging to do quality research in many different disciplines. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right, but it has to be part of the governance of the institutions. There must be some institute of interdisciplinary research where you can identify the grand challenges. And when you see what's happening around us now in terms of health sciences and sustainability and climate change, those disciplines need an interdisciplinary team. You cannot just, the sustainability issue is not just environmental, it's societal, it's economic, it's technological, and so on. So by having the right structure in an institution, I think we're still at the very early days as well in terms of interdisciplinary research. I know for sure in some parts of the world, monodisciplinary research is almost dead, and the future is interdisciplinarity. So the more we can work together. Of course, post-COVID now, COVID has one advantage. It taught us how to be online and how to collaborate internationally. So you can select now the technologists, the sociologists, the I don't know, scientists and so on, put them in a research team. You can do the research really remotely, so it's not as costly as before when you need to travel and pay a lot of money for labs. Your labs could be done now virtually. So the opportunity for global interdisciplinary research is much, much better now. And we are dealing with the millennial and Generation Z who are digital natives. So they speak the language, they don't need to think about it. And this would put them in a very, very strong position to conduct really inspiring interdisciplinary research.
I could add one more thing.
Please.
I think research is to solve a problem. And many researchers, they do research. I think now at this era, the problem is becoming so complicated. So it required the interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary. The challenge that we are facing in higher institution, many higher, not all, but many higher institutions, still they are working in silo. And colleges, especially in our region, you know. So I think the first thing to do is to dismantle this silo.
Are there strategies that you've seen to extend that collaboration, just picking up on a theme that's been coming out over and over again, to be deliberately inclusive of regions, of countries, of researchers from those regions and countries that are not as well resourced? How are there inclusive strategies that you're seeing to also feed this type of collaboration that you're talking about?
I would say opportunities exist. For example, what UNESCO, United Nations, did for the 16 SDGs, they are unifying and inviting everybody in the world to work on these 16 areas of research, development, technology, of poverty, of water, of energy, of just name it, 16 of them. And they put really metrics to encourage and give incentive to people to work in this area, to the point where now, 5 years ago, I never used to take into consideration SDG, but now every 6 months before our board of trustees asked me to make a presentation on status of research in the last 6 months, the first thing I present is I go to Cyvel and get statistics about the contribution of University of Sharjah to every SDG. Research-wise, we are doing 5% in this, 20% in this, etc. So there is this opportunity where all of us can take it as a ground and work in these very important areas that would include, that are comprehensive and would include any specialty that exists in any university.
One thing that I would like to add, and it goes back to one of the questions that you asked before with regards to the various publishing models that are out there. One thing that we see is the rise of diamond open access publishing from within the region and a lot of university presses, which they're supporting and managing the journal, and they're sharing the knowledge. There's no APCs in order to publish it, and basically the results are free. And this is something that has also been picked up in other countries as well, and that sort of in the spectrum of the different colors, diamond is one of those colors that there's no financial burden. It's basically the funder or the society that is actually funding that journal and making it accessible and available for all. not just on the publishing side, but also not on the access side, but also to publish. But again, when we talk about equitable access and providing, when it comes to the publishing world, it's a process, and every process has its costs. So the motivation and the business models actually follows that cost, and that covering the cost. And in some cases, we have the bigger revenues as well. Before the cost was passed on to the subscribers in order to pay for their cost of production, peer review, editorial, etc., etc. Now the business model changed to be charging the author. So, and that's, as we discussed, not the only two ways in order that, because to provide that access, because now we see in some countries there's challenges to pay the APC fees. And I was at the Frankfurt Book Fair last week, and there was someone asking me, because we've actually came up with a business model to provide equitable access and affordable access in a world where you've got open, you've got paid, paywall. We've actually introduced something called affordable access, and it's available worldwide, and we launched it last week at the Frankfurt Book Fair. While we were announcing this, there was one of the publishers who came to me and said, can you please do something about the APCs as well? So it's basically being open to experiment and coming forward with different ways to be able to provide. And we see in the publishing world as well, it's not just ABC, there's not just transformative agreements, there's read and publish, there's so many different new models that are being introduced. The main thing is to be brave enough and to be innovative and to try new business models that will benefit the society and provide equitable access.
I'd like to add a few more words, because you're absolutely right. And when you look at the drivers behind open access was transparency, equitable access to everybody. And this was the whole philosophy behind it. Unfortunately, the business model evolved in such a way that there may be a lack of equity somehow, the way you mentioned it. But I hope that it will be resolved through some new and innovative business model. With the use of technology now, you can do more, of course. So the whole idea was to be inclusive. This is in response to Heather. Of course, Professor, the driver as well for responding to all the SDGs is the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. So, so you are driven by some business drivers as well, and this is reality.
I think one of the points that you just made is so important to pick up on and to remember. I've been involved in the move towards open access from the inception of the idea of open access in 2001. And people will ask me often, if you could go back to the beginning of the open access movement and change anything, what would it be? And honestly, I would have changed the name. I wouldn't have put the emphasis on access, because I think that's part of what has driven models to develop that really support 1/2 or really 1/3 of the equation that we're trying to solve in the open research, open science movement, right? Which is the ability for people to not only access in an equitable way the results of scientific research, but to be able to contribute to the body of scientific and scholarly research and to benefit from it in equitable ways. So when we're looking at developing business models, global business models to support openness and open research, we really need to look at evolving models to solve for all three: access, contribution to knowledge, and the ability for people to fairly benefit from it as well. And I think that's one of the routes and strategies that we see a lot of promise in moving forward and placing that emphasis on. I recognize we only have 5 minutes left in the panel, and I want to make sure. Oh, please go ahead. We have one.
I just wanted to tell you that I have a better name for open access. It is closed access till you pay money.
Listen, great. I did want to just close with.
Can we ask you a question?
Yes.
The concept of open access started from what? My understanding, because if the publisher keep raising the prices for the institution. Is that true?
The motivation?
The publisher?
The motivation.
Journal publisher?
Yeah, I think the motivation behind open access, and I'll say this from my position, which is admittedly slightly biased because I run a library membership organization. So one of the motivators was the increasing costs of scientific journals. But the real motivation behind open access was actually the emergence of the internet and network digital technology, and the ability for the first time in human history, us to be able to marry the long tradition that scholars and scientists had of freely sharing the results of their work, communicating them with each other without expectation of payment, with the immediate ability to do that on a worldwide basis at little to no marginal cost. So it was really an opportunity driven by the emergence of technology combined with the long and rich history of scholars sharing knowledge to share knowledge, right? Not as a commodity, not as a commercial model. So that motivation behind the open access movement really was driven by that opportunity. Yes, cost and the commercialization were a motivating factor, but they were not the primary motivation there. So I'm going to just open it up for any last words that that you on the panel might have, and in particular, any last words about what you think your colleagues in the higher education community, what you would encourage them to think about or focus on in order to keep the momentum moving forwards towards a global movement to make open sharing of research the default mode.
Yeah, really, I wanted to mention something about this. Now, as we said, many people cannot pay for APCs, but there are ways to at least relieve a bit so many people who cannot pay. For example, I read somewhere recently statistics that say close to 70% of publishers accept and do not mind if the researcher puts preprint. Before reviewing, you put your paper on the web, it's available to all, preprint. That's one possibility. So you are right by insisting of saying, what are the universities or higher education doing? We are not doing enough. This is in our hand. It's our researchers' hand to put our preprints. Not 5% of us are putting preprints. But with preprints, you solve a lot of problems. It's a full paper, the same paper. There are many other ways, you know, repository and many other ways to have a database of papers legally that are available to all.
I would say to them, think outside the box, collaborate, and take advantage of technology. Now, you can have international collaborators almost for free. This is reality. It didn't exist at my generation. We didn't have this opportunity. We have a golden opportunity now to take advantage of the technology and collaborate and publish and make our research, I don't know, publications in open access or even in some journals as well.
To me, I will say thanks to Khalifa University for this great initiative, but I think it's not an easy thing to do. So it has to form a group that they are champion. They believe in this one. And so for us to succeed, thank you.
Yeah, just I think for me, just brief, I look forward to see a day when open access doesn't belong to the elite, but it belongs to the whole, so to the whole world.
And Cameron, we'll give you the last word before we close.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to what I mentioned at the beginning of all the sessions today in the welcome. To me, open means more collaboration, means removing the barriers and really creating that infrastructure for sharing and innovation. I think the word open and free, they are two different things. I think removing the barriers and really opening up for collaboration, that would really reduce the inequalities, level the playing field. And as Dr. Ghassan mentioned, thinking out of the box, we talked about AI, that will really fast forward a lot of the collaboration opportunities that are available, because it's all of a sudden making science available that those who could not normally take a huge article and understand all the concepts. Now you have AI-based summarizations. You can quickly get the gist of it. You can ask natural questions, and you can get back answers from the evidence. So we're really, I think the scientific community is playing a much more important role. Its role will become more and more highlighted, and will become more and more accessible to individuals around the world. And I would like to thank you, Heather. It was a very difficult job to moderate online, and you've done a fantastic job. And thank you very much for all the questions, and the fellow panelists for very inspiring conversations.
Thank you so much.